We now move into the next segment of this session on the same topic. We have a panel of esteemed leaders to share some use cases and examples on overcoming CX hurdles by developing database persona and interventions. Why is data important and how best can we leverage to get insights for better outcomes? Our speakers for this session are Geng, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer, F5 Networks. Geng is responsible for leading technology, strategy, product evolution, and critical innovations for the company. We also have with us Millie, Gillon, Global Head of Client Experience, MD, Standard Chartered. Millie is a native New Yorker and a Singapore transplant who has a wealth of knowledge about innovation and strategy and combines this with the use of data and design thinking to reshape the client experience and innovation. The moderator for the session is Richard Farrand, Senior Vice President, Conduent, experienced senior executive with a deep experience in financial services at CEO and COO level in IT operations and leading large teams across multiple geographies. It's a pleasure to have you all join us, and over to you, Richard. The floor is all yours.
Welcome to Millie and to Lynn. My name's Richard. Today's session is about customer experience. And how data can play a role in the provision of great customer service to clients of companies. How do we build integrated platforms and systems that can create a joined up experience for a customer? And how to make sense of data? How does data work in the world in which we operate, in a digitized world? And can we use data for the benefit of our customers? And not just for the benefit of the institution. Clearly, algorithms and machine learning, AI is coming into play, where the provision of suggestions and ideas for service can be offered, but also gain a better understanding of what customers are doing and what their expectations are. And of course, to deliver a consistent brand experience, we want to make sure that our delivery is consistent across the multiple touch points and channels that customers experience from our companies and the companies in which we work. And many of the people that attend the GCC will be working for institutions and directly or indirectly impacting or supporting the provision of service to their customers. So I'm going to start off by asking a question, first of all, to Millie, if I may. Customers come in and touch organizations based on convenience for them. It's really hard to manage and direct behavior to, say, a channel of choice or a process of choice. So what are the key ingredients that shape success to ensure that there's a positive outcome for your customers as you design your multi-channel and digital environment, Millie?
Sure. So actually, I think what's most important is to understand and identify the moments that matter. So what you're speaking about is really the onboarding experience in terms of entering the system. So is that the moment that matters, or is it really the moments that matter beyond that, beyond just onboarding and application and starting a relationship? So for example, what we found was earlier this year, we started on a journey to really improve the client communications. And we tried to understand, what should our scope be? Is it most important to focus on the onboarding aspect? And one particular example, we looked at the T's and C's, or the terms and conditions, because as an individual consumer, that is so confusing, regardless of where in the world and what language that you're familiar with. It is so confusing and full of legalese. But what we actually identified is that while we can focus a lot of energy and time in enhancing it, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter to the customer, because no matter how simplified the T's and C's are, they will still glaze over it and continue to move forward. So what are the moments that truly matter to the customer, as opposed to the moments of truth?
So I think what you're saying then is, kind of put yourself in the shoes of the customer, whether it's actually at onboarding or whether it's a transactional activity or interaction. Make sure you understand what the customer is trying to get out of that interaction, and design your process and systems to meet that need. Lynn, let me just ask you a question. So with the use and the deployment of AI and machine learning and algorithms and you know, the collection of data, if you like, how can we use those new operating models, if you will, to enrich service for a client? You know, how can technology really help? And you know, to Millie's point, to position yourself as a company in the shoes and in the eyes of the client, to provide that extra value or wow experience.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Richard. The fundamental technology breakthrough in this digital world for us to improve user experience, fundamentally it hinge on two elements: the ability to collect and process huge amount of data, but then the second one is to figure out the true insights, whether that's the insights per the customer's buying behavior or predicting customers' future needs, is all resides in the technology breakthrough in the AI and ML techniques. So we definitely we're in the middle of a transformation where we are moving the service experience from a kind of a class-based, where you define a class of service, into personalized service, and leveraging AI and machine learning systems and different data model, and optimizing that tailored to the personal needs are effectively the general approach we're taking to personalize services. And I think this boils down to individual cases that we can see. We can use past behavior in a retail environment to predict a potential buying an items that the customer may want to purchase. We can use the all kinds of signals in the banking industry to make a better lending decision, to reduce risk. We can even use a person's driving behavior, past driving behavior, to predict or collectively to predict a traffic hotspot, and as a consequence in a Google Map, as an example, to suggest an alternative route for you to avoid that. So those are all the hinge on the dual pillar of data, huge amount of data, and the ability through AI and ML to deliver insights, to discover insights.
Right, okay. And do you think then that this new world in which we live from a data management point of view is a force for good in the provision of service? Do you expect, in your personal experience with the institutions you deal with, whether it's, I don't know, whether you're using these fast food delivery, Uber Eats and the like, or even in a credit card scenario or banking scenario, do you see that companies are making good use of data with the provision of digital services through smartphones and the like? Do you feel as if it's being designed with you as a consumer in mind?
Yeah, that's a very complicated question. I think when it comes to the value that resides in the data, and even to that matter, the data you collect and from the consumers and customers, the trade-off is always between privacy and the value added you can discover or you can gain deliver further. So obviously this is almost a pendulum between the two extremes. Now, what is the best compromise? I think it varies from one service to another, one sector to another, highly regulated versus less regulated industries. But I think the overarching principle in the company, in the service provider side, is to make customer success, your customer success, as the ultimate goal. And I'll quote an early company mission by Google, which no longer, they have passed that stage, but don't do evil. That is the representation of what I was saying, put customer success in your mind. Now, obviously regulation has kicked in, so even don't do evil is insufficient. But to keep your customer success as the ultimate goal.
Indeed, and actually, and I will be slightly, I smile as I say this because I think Millie, Standard Chartered's strapline is here for good, right? So the opposite of evil, actually. So Standard Chartered is here for good. Google may have been here to avoid evil in the past. So in a financial services scenario, if we lead on from that, you know, what we see is, you know, organizations are set up to be effective for them as organizations. So you might have somebody managing the internet channel, you might have somebody managing a face-to-face or retail channel. How do you integrate that? What's your thinking, Millie, in terms of how do you join that together? So from a client point of view, because I don't care, I just want to get something done. And I might call you, I might message you, I might walk into a physical branch. How do you make that, you know, that experience seamless and designed with the customer in mind?
In a number of different ways. One is by putting the customer experience at the front end and essentially putting the customer in the center, designing around them, and then designing around the business needs, priorities, etc. afterwards at the end. It's still important. It just may not necessarily be the first and foremost and only important piece to figure out. And then the other piece is essentially trying to have a set of client experience principles and really ensure that we're not doing evil and beyond that. But then also trying to make sure we know our customers as individuals. That should be a basic, not so much as an aspiration. And then also just not only thinking about our external customers, but most importantly, our internal customers. So whenever I'm working or my team is working on any type of initiative, we're always thinking about the external customer and then the implications for the internal customer and how do we design that experience or enhance that experience for our internal colleagues.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the, and I like the mantra, know me as an individual. I mean, we all want to be known and treated as individuals with whichever institutions that we deal with. And I think the other thing is the world transitioning from, what's the right way to express it, from spoon feeding people and doing work on behalf of your clients to getting the clients to effectively do the work. So effectively putting them in control. So they execute the transaction. If you go back, and again, obviously I have a lot of experience in banking, but back in the day, if you wanted to transfer money between two accounts, you'd have to send a letter to the bank and somebody would then key it in. Now all of that is done online. So what do you think the impact is of moving away from, or pushing the routine for execution in the eyes of the client, in the hands of the client, which means that the institution becomes a problem solver or an exception management interface or a value add through advice, sales, or additional services. Lynn, you know, what's your view of the design of that ecosystem, if you like? You know, again, personally, how do you feel when you're doing something versus, oh, I've got to call up to get somebody else to do it?
Yeah, I think a good question. I do agree that the first step to improve or to deliver personalized service is mostly through self-service. And that's where you change from a cookie cutter approach where the provider offers a well-defined class-based service to everyone into a self-experienced personalized service. Of course, one inconvenient way to do that is to give a lot of the steps to the customer themselves, and their aka self-service as the predominant model. However, I also see the second step, which is the provider is also responsible over time to remove the interim complexity. Yes, at a consumption level, it is personalized, but you don't need to expose all the interim step to the customer. Take financial services world, online account creation. Ideal user experience is that you can offer a customer the DAO, digital account opening within, say, 5 minutes or even less to get the account opened, not necessarily exposed to all the backend interconnection of the different systems. Or in another way, another example I can express that in the Google situation, where Google Map, Google Search, and they try to remove all the interim step from the consumer. Yes, the search result you get is highly personalized, but you don't necessarily need to tell the provider that this is my criteria, and so on. So it is that actually tie into the previous topic I was talking about. ML AI techniques behind the scene can actually gradually allow the accomplishment of both personalized, almost a self-service kind of end result, but you also don't need to have all those interim steps. So I see the model moving through 2 steps.
I have a slightly different view on personalization. Earlier this year, my team and I, we did an in-depth analysis and research to really understand what is personalization. First, we started out with what is the definition, and we determined there is no single definition of what personalization is because it's so personal. It's so specific to each person. And then aside from that hilarious finding, what we also found is that there will always be people who want a high touch, who don't want to do it themselves. There will always be people who want to do everything themselves and never want to interact with others. That's fine. But then there's also there's always going to be a group of people who are in the middle. And I think the key is balancing that act between all 3. But then from a personalization perspective, as well as a technology aspect, there's a few different levels of personalization that we came up with. So for example, one is passive. It's pretty much anyone has these tools, they have access to these tools to go and create that experience themselves and tailor it to their needs and their wants. Example, when you go into Starbucks and you order your coffee, every single cup of coffee is personalized. The next piece is around personal. So moving from passive to personal, and that is saying, dear my specific name, and then the rest of this canned communication. But then moving on that spectrum, there's productive, and that's really around segmentation models, and then trying to tailor what are the recommendations for the next best action. And then also moving on from there, there's predictive. So I think that's really where AI and machine learning start to tune up a little bit, or we turn up the notch on that, and really understanding what are the client's behaviors, and then being able to predict or determine what their needs and wants are, and then passively give that to them, whether it is through valuable, specific, and tailored advice, or through promotions or offers. And then the last piece that we found was around pleasant. How do I surprise and delight my customers beyond knowing it's their birthday, beyond knowing what their needs are in the near future, but then also being weaved into and integrated into their everyday life experience. So in a sense, having carving out a piece of their life share to carve out that piece of the mind share, and eventually that means carving out the piece of the wallet share.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a very good articulation, actually. And I like the, personal is personal, which is true. And, people will vary their expectations, maybe even day to day. One day they're happy, one day they're sad, kind of thing, if you like. But I do believe that, getting done what you're trying to get done, whether you're trying to change a flight with an airline, when you're trying to get a new card, when you've lost a credit card. So the execution of service, doing the basics really well and pushing some of those basics to the point that you've made, Lynn, into the hands of the client is clearly going to help with that outcome, which will then lead Millie into the opportunity for some of those value add services and some of that intelligence that then can be applied to the overall proposition. So can I just move the agenda in a slightly different direction? And Millie, you're obviously, well, both of you guys are heavily involved in innovation and transformation activities. In Conduent, where I work, we're also very interested and investing in innovation, and specifically investing in people and in talent. And so perhaps we can just talk for a few minutes about what role does the people play, and what capabilities and skills are you seeing as sort of hot topics, if you like. And I don't mean, we need more programmers who know Python or AI. I mean, what are the mindset and, attitudinal talent characteristics that are going to be important or are important in the world in which we're operating today, but you're seeing as important moving forward. So, if you're a young and aspiring attendee at this conference, where do what would your counsel be in terms of them directing their future development needs or their future careers? Lynn, do you want to have a?
I can offer some perspectives from my vantage point. I think there are two aspects I would comment on. The first one is the companies, where the talent is attracted to, they're changing. So from a traditional context where I call the data scientists and software developers and so on, who are dealing with data and machine learning and so on, traditionally, the companies who build up the skill set for that school of talents belongs to what we call traditionally the tech industries. Nowadays, that every vertical industry, every B2C company, every service provider is actually becoming an application development company and a data company. So the CIOs for a bank, the CIO for a large retail store, they build huge data scientist team. They gather huge amount of user data. They need to build very scalable applications and digital services that can reach to millions of customers. So from that perspective, a bank, a retail store is actually not too much different than a web company, internet cloud company, Google, Facebook, or LinkedIn, as an example. So that's the first place. So if we look at the company who actually builds the center of excellence for data, for software, and so on, is changing. So every vertical industry, every digital enterprise is a center, needs to build this center of excellence. Secondly, at the individual basis, I do see that with the emergence of data as a pillar in the digital economy, same as application, that the skill set is actually shifting, perhaps to fill a void where previously it didn't have. So, but definitely the increased demand on data scientists, data analytics, and higher level skills on machine learning and so on, in addition to the basic programming application development skill set. On top of that, SREs, operation, how do you scale digital services? So those are, I think I can offer insight from those two aspects.
And I suppose the other thing is that those of us who aren't working directly in that deep, that more technical area, need to have a good appreciation and understanding of the possibilities of what the technology can do in the design of services and the provision of services to clients. So Millie, what's your view on the talent agenda?
Sure. So I think if I were to speak to up and coming undergrad or someone who's just starting on their career, I would say that the most important skill and career path is for you to really develop and hone creative problem solving skills. so easy for me to just say that, but extremely difficult to go figure it out. What does Millie mean? So what I mean here is, if you're starting out, go deep and really understand something, become a mini expert, not too deep to the point where you're there for the rest of your career, but at least have that understanding, use that as a base, and then learn around that. So getting that depth, but then also getting the breadth of whichever industry or industries that you want to focus on or you have an interest in. The other piece is that what's really lacking on the APAC side of the world is our design thinkers and good UX designers. Right. What I've noticed is my transition from North America to APAC and to AMI, or to Africa, Middle East, is that there are a lot of people who may not necessarily focus on looking at the bigger picture and solving that business problem, whilst also taking into account many other macro environment factors. So that's really important, and you could quickly get a job doing that. But then also UX designer, they are a dime a dozen. I can stumble upon them, but a good UX designer, that is what is severely lacking globally, even in North America. What I mean by that is, if I explain to them, this is what I'm looking for, or if a customer is saying, this is my problem, these are my pain points, this is what my motivation is, they're able to take all of these, what seems like random words, and turn that into visual, turn that into a logical flow. Of course, with some guidance with the design thinker, but I'm really lacking this type of talent, regardless of where in the world, but even more so around the APAC and Africa area. So I think these are some of the technical skills that can be learned, but then you can only learn so much in the academic space. What's really most important is the practical experience. And then the last piece to creative problem solving is stay abreast of what is going on in the world, because that will help you to connect the dots. Connect the dots is something that you'll hear probably forever in your career. And it could be interpreted in so many different ways. But one way that I connect the dots is by just keeping a pulse of what's going on in culture and society in the world, and then taking that and implementing it into, well, if these are societal problems or these are world problems, how can I, as an individual in financial services, go about solving that? What can I do to incorporate these problems, turn them into solutions, into my client journeys, into my everyday work? And especially in financial services, anyone who works here, regardless of the tenure, regardless of how high or low the level is, we have significant power in the world to go and make a positive difference. So using all of those skills, and especially in financial services, no offense to my colleagues in technology, but especially in financial services, this is where you can make a positive difference and help individuals in the world.
So I think that's a great sort of call to action, if you like, Millie. I think that's a really good summary. And Lynn, thank you so much for your insights and inputs as well. I think my mantra is, be intellectually curious and look to learn every day. And, over my career, I've found that networking at all levels in an organization and externally is always a very powerful way. Have an open mind to the possibilities that other people may bring to your to a problem or an issue that you might be looking to solve. So this has been a fantastic discussion, guys. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Lynn. We started off thinking about data in the context of customer experience. I don't think we have all the answers. We have many people on the GCC Conclave who will be facing many challenges on a day-to-day basis, and hopefully our discussion today will be stimulating for them to go back to the office or back to their home environment and try and figure out some new ways of doing really great things for customers and leveraging the data agenda and the data environment in which they're operating. So, Lynn, thank you again. Millie, thank you so much. My name's Richard, and it's been a great conversation this morning. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard, Geng, and Millie, for that enlightening discussion on overcoming CX hurdles by developing database persona and interventions.